Welcome to the situation update for Wednesday, December 22nd, 2021. This is Mike Adams here, the Health Ranger. We've got a breaking bombshell story for you today, and it's presented in two parts. So this will be two separate podcasts. The first one here, maybe 30 to 45 minutes, and then there'll be a second one of a similar time. The story today is about Charles Lieber, the scientist, who was just found guilty yesterday after being prosecuted by the Department of Justice. If you've not heard the name Charles Lieber, get prepared to go deep down the rabbit hole, because that's where we are going today. So here we go. All right, prepare to be blown away. We're going to go deep down the rabbit hole today. So, okay, yesterday, on the winter solstice, no less, Harvard professor Charles M. Lieber was found guilty of lying to government authorities about his ties to China. And this is in a federal court. It's being called a stunning downfall for one of the country's top chemists. And he hid the money and lied to U.S. government investigators, and he got prosecuted. Arrested by the DOJ, I believe, last year. And he was arrested along with two other researchers from China. One was a woman who turned out to be a lieutenant with the People's Liberation Army. So the People's Liberation Army has infiltrated Harvard. Nanowires that are embedded into human biology using a patented carbon nanotube release system that was developed by who? Charles M. Lieber. And we've only scratched the surface. So here we go. A federal jury found Lieber guilty on all 6 felony charges. Federal prosecutors said that Lieber, age 62, he was trying to win a Nobel Prize. That's his cover story. He concealed his ties to China's, quote, 1,000 Talents program, which is the way China pays off scientists and researchers in the United States, university people. By the way, in case you didn't know this, just as a background story, China has kickbacks and bribes to thousands of scientists in the United States working in. So what I want to play for you here first is a video that talks about the arrest. And this is U.S. Attorney, Andrew Fleming? Who is this? U.S. Attorney with the U.S. Department of Justice. This is from last year. Here's his arrest. Check out this video.
We're here today to announce 3 separate cases highlighting the ongoing threat posed by Chinese economic espionage and research theft in the United States.
Federal investigators at the Lexington home of 60-year-old Dr. Charles Lieber today, moments after his arrest at his Harvard office.
The complaint alleges that Dr. Lieber signed a contract with the Chinese university in Wuhan and was paid up to $50,000 per month, plus up to $158,000 in living expenses.
The chair of Harvard's chemistry department.
Okay, pausing it again here at 1:04. Did you hear that? So this Chinese female who worked at Boston University. So again, this is the total infiltration of America's educational institutions, Harvard and Boston University. And by the way, that's not the end of this list. And as the DOJ officer, whoever he is explaining here in this news clip, and it turns out they had found the perfect combination in E6. And this was when Dr. Mikovits was working, I believe she said, the Fort Detrick U.S. Army Bioweapons Research Center. That's not the official name, but that's what they did in Fort Detrick, Maryland. So they took this bioweapon that was developed by the United States military. So that's the background for what you're about to see. Let's go ahead and play some more of this video.
Now, Lieber is due back in court Thursday. He's currently behind bars. He could face up to 5 years in prison if convicted. And Harvard does tell me he's currently on paid administrative leave.
I.e. you carrying a 5G cell phone. So the 5G cell phone that you're carrying around is the targeting device it's tied to you and your credit card and your name and, your phone number, social, and all that. They can beam a 5G, a very powerful 5G radiation cone at you by targeting your phone. And the 5G cell networks that have been installed all over the cities have long been suspected of. Let me read for you some of the patents that Charles Lieber has filed and has been awarded over the years. Nanopore sensing by local electrical potential measurement. Okay, that's sensing the environment at the cellular level, by the way, sensing cell membranes. See, Charles Lieber developed technology to use carbon nanotubes to penetrate cells and then to release things inside the cells. All right, continuing with the patents list. Controlled growth of nanoscale wires. That's another patent. I mean, that's patent number 104358817, by the way, if you're curious. US patent number. Here's another patent. Scaffolds comprising nanoelectronic components for cells, tissues, and other applications. This is the Borgification patent, you might say. This is the patent talking about turning you into a cyborg. Again, scaffolds, right, like a mesh of nanowires, comprising nanoelectronic components for cells, tissues, and other applications. This is talking about microcircuits, nanoscale circuits that are interfacing with your neurology. All right, he's got another patent. Let's see, an anisotropic deposition in nanoscale wires, nanosensors, related technologies. Let's see. Well, here's another patent. Nanoscale wires, nanoscale wire FET devices, and nanotube electronic hybrid devices for sensing and other applications. Nanoscale field effect transistors, that's what FET stands for biomolecular sensors and other applications. Bent nanowires and related probing of species. Let's see, controlled synthesis of monolithically integrated graphene structure. That's another patent. That's patent number 9029836. Okay. High resolution molecular sensor, liquid films containing nanostructured materials, nanoscopic wire-based devices and arrays. Okay, this guy's got a patent list that is very long. I've got 2 patents. This guy's got like 50. And they have everything to do with nanoscale technology. Here's one. Doped elongated semiconductors, growing such semiconductors and devices, including such semiconductors, and fabricating such devices, transition metal oxide nanowires, branched nanoscale wires, apparatus method and computer program products providing radial addressing of nanowires. You know why that one's important? Because that patent talks about how you can control the nanowires once they're embedded into a person's biology. It's radial addressing. So there's a signal or an energy source that goes into a central location, and it designates which wire to send out which impulse at what frequency and what strength and so on, and it goes out to that wire. Now, this is all, I wouldn't call this mind control technology. That's more of a psychological phenomenon. This is more of brain control. This is a neurological control system, but it's also a cell sensing system and a payload delivery system in the cells. And that's what we're going to get into here next. Now, let's see. GreatGameIndia.com did a really good story on this. We're going to go through some of that. And also, by the way, stateofthenation.co has covered this, and philosophersstone.info. A few other sites, but this has not been widely covered. We need to cover this in a much more in-depth way, because this is too big for one person to dig into it and dig up everything. But check this out. All right. From Great Game India, It is said that Lieber was recruited for advanced research into nanowire batteries, but an investigation by Great Game, we already know that. The story says basically this is a recruitment plan by China which seeks to lure Chinese overseas talent and foreign experts to bring their knowledge back to China, and then they get rewarded for stealing proprietary information. So things don't add up, though, since the focus of Lieber's research has never been about nanowire batteries. So, in other words, some of the original news was all a cover story. They said, oh, he was working on battery technology, for electric vehicles. But no. A former student of Lieber says, quote, I've never seen Charlie working on batteries or nanowire batteries. In fact, in all his research papers and patents, there's no mention of batteries or vehicles. Not one mention of batteries. And I just read for you some of the patent titles. What Lieber could do was create nanostructures using nothing but simple and inexpensive chemical techniques. He then went on to show how these nanowires could be used as transistors, complex logic circuits, data storage devices, and even sensors in the human body. In 2001, Harvard Magazine published a report that discussed Lieber's research into what was called at the time liquid computing. The report mentioned how Lieber was at the forefront of one of the greatest challenges in microelectronics, making silicon chips smaller and smaller. A decade later, Lieber created a transistor so small of an animal, attach itself to the neurons, and monitor electrical signals between the cells. You starting to understand that patent about radial addressing of nanowires now? You see? So this is a nanowires mesh. And by the way, this is something that folds out. So it starts all folded up, and you put it into a biological system, and then it unfolds. It self-assembles, you could say, and it attaches itself to neurons, and it begins to monitor electrical signals. And it can both monitor and it can... Now, I've looked at the scientific papers on this, and those papers don't specifically mention 5G, but they do provide for a mechanism that you could use 5G to accomplish this. It would take quite a lot of power, by the way. So this wouldn't be just a normal cell phone call level of power. It would have to be a 5G tower. Now, I know that a big red flag just went off in the minds of many of you listening who are extremely well informed. Look into the Pilgrims Society at Harvard. Yeah, seriously. Look into the history of Harvard. Look into Skull and Bones. Look into secret societies that come out of Yale and Harvard and MIT, and ties to Jeffrey Epstein, and ties to, well, once you get into Epstein, then that's tied to child trafficking and pedophilia and blackmailing the world's globalist leaders and so on and so forth. But all of this is connected. Mad scientists, child raping pedophiles, academic cover stories, patents, the People's Liberation Army, Fauci, the pandemic, trying to overthrow all civil liberties across the planet. This is all connected. This is all one story with just different little subplots, by the way. That's quite a title. What does it mean? Well, first we have to understand what is DFT. And I believe the use of DFT in this paper is they're referring to density functional theory. So density functional theory, DFT, it is a modeling analysis method that's used in chemistry to try to map out the nuclear structure of matter, molecules, and then how those molecules interact with each other. And it works at the nanoscale or even the picoscale of interaction between molecules. So where you have a lot of seemingly strange forces operating at that scale. So, you know, there are a lot of different imaging techniques that you can use to try to look at molecules. For example, NMR, nuclear magnetic resonance imaging, which you have to build a giant freaking Faraday cage the size of a room, and you have to have $1 million piece of equipment, and you can't wear metal. It's like, wow, this thing's expensive. And it doesn't even give you a clear picture, by the way. But this is something like that, but it's more on the theory side. This is the mathematical theory side, okay? DFT. So what are they trying to model? They're trying to model what happens when you have a bunch of carbon nanotubes that exist at the nano scale, obviously, hence nanotubes. We'll just call them CNTs, carbon nanotubes. And just imagine little tiny tunnels, okay? Not even very long. Like, I don't know what would be a good example of this. So yeah, you can put carbon nanotubes through a needle, no problem. The needles are huge compared to nanoscale devices. So what this paper is talking about then is a way to inject carbon nanotubes into your body that contain payloads, and then to activate those payloads to release those payloads in your body, in your blood, using an external electromagnetic signal or power source of some kind. Combined with the nanowire mesh structure, is able to focus the current onto the carbon nanotubes, in effect focusing electromagnetic radiation to a very small point, creating the necessary heat or molecular excitation that's necessary to release the payload in the body. So yes, carbon nanotubes can be used as a payload delivery device, and they can be activated with external 5G. And then it went to swords and spears, and then it was guns and bullets, and then it was missiles and bombs, and now what's the highest evolution of warfare? A hypodermic needle. The needle is the weapon. Well, the needle administers the weapon. So they don't need missiles and bombs and bullets and sticks and stones and swords to kill you. In addition, the swabs might contain self-assembling nanowire mesh constructs that latch on to human neurology, embed themselves, and begin to monitor or to manipulate neurology. This might explain some of the personality changes that we're seeing, but I'm not sure yet. We need more research into this. Then, in preparation for this, for the last 20 years, China rolls out very competitively priced 5G networking and control hardware that for some reason is incredibly affordable, so that every country in the world uses it, every government uses it, every city uses it. That's Huawei. And that's installed almost everywhere now. Although, by the way, to his credit, did try to ban Huawei hardware in the United States. I think Biden has overturned that ban, but I'm not sure. I would have to double check that. But nevertheless, there's a lot of Huawei hardware that's in use in the 5G systems. Now, remember, China has been caught before selling desktop computing motherboards that had an extra processor on them that monitored everything that computer was used for. And this went into motherboards that were sold by the millions and put into people's computers. China was able to monitor everything that was happening in people's personal computers at the BIOS level of the motherboards. In fact, that story is something like 6 or 7 or 8 years old. I don't even remember what year that was, but we covered it back then. China has used its technology, manufacturing, and exporting infrastructure in order to install spy systems into the 5G networks and military applications and so on. So yes, China has the ability to throw a switch and turn off microprocessors that are used by the United States military, and also that are used by, power grid infrastructure companies and operations and so on. But most importantly, China also has the technology to flip a switch and send out a 5G activation signal worldwide, in Europe, in Canada, in the US, in Australia, everywhere, that would instantaneously release the payloads that are in the carbon nanotubes hiding in people's bodies right now. Like that scene out of Surrogate, another Bruce Willis movie. Remember at the end when the plug was pulled and all the surrogates just collapsed in the streets? That might become a reality. It's not science fiction anymore. It's actually, all this technology exists in the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office files. It's pretty incredible. In fact, let me just read a little bit from that study, that paper. It says, since the discovery of carbon nanotubes in 1991, they've come to the focus of attention. Their benefits can be currently found. Let's see. The idea of using a hollow cylindrical structure as a transporter or container has been proposed for many years, and hence its release from the nanotubes. There you go. That's what I was talking about. So that's right in the study. Again, thermal energy delivered to the carbon nanotube by a laser light. This could also be from 5G. Focus using the nanowire mesh structure inside the tube to release whatever's in the tube from the tube. It can be used to weaken and disrupt the carbon nanotube molecule interaction. The local temperature around the nanotubes is controlled by adjusting the laser radiation intensity that results in preventing the death of a target biological cell. You got that? So this is the technology that we're dealing with here. Now, some people hearing this might immediately say, this must be alien tech or something. Must be some exotic alien tech. And maybe that's how it first fell into the hands of human beings, perhaps, kind of like the transistor in 1947. That's possible. But humans have been, modifying and enhancing this technology, as we've seen from the patent record of Charles Lieber himself. So the patent record is, that's pretty mind-blowing. It shows he's been working on this for a couple of decades. All right, now, this is the end of part 1. I'm going to have my editor package this and release this separately to get it out faster. And then we're going to continue in part 2, when you're going to find out who was the father of Charles Lieber and who he worked for in the fields of science and weapons development. This rabbit hole gets even deeper, folks. So watch my channel on Brighteon.com for part 2 of today's Situation Update podcast. Thank you for listening so far. There's a lot more yet to come.